Welcome to this explainer. You know, the world of AI implementation is moving incredibly fast right now. And here's the thing, a single misunderstanding about the tech you're buying, it can literally cost a business millions of dollars and months of completely wasted effort. So today, we're diving straight into the shift from traditional automation to agentic AI. We're not just talking about a software upgrade here. This is a fundamental change in how work actually gets done. Honestly, understanding this shift is the difference between an absolute AI triumph and a massive, painfully expensive failure.
Okay, so picture this. A massive enterprise sinks huge sums into a brand new, supposedly state-of-the-art AI initiative. The executives are thrilled, the board is watching closely, and then day one of deployment hits, and it completely crashes and burns. I mean, totally paralyzes operations instead of accelerating them. So why did this multi-million-dollar initiative fail right out of the gate? Well, the answer isn't that the technology itself was broken or buggy. Actually, it's much more foundational than that. The business totally misunderstood what they actually bought. They basically deployed the exact wrong tool for the job.
And the root of all this confusion? Well, marketing has deliberately blurred the lines. I'm sure you hear the terms AI automation and agentic AI thrown around constantly in pitches, vendor meetings, glossy brochures. And because both involve artificial intelligence doing things for us, leaders just naturally assume they mean the exact same thing, right? Just AI doing tasks automatically. But as our source material reveals, marketing departments have purposefully blurred this distinction just to sell more software. They're totally glossing over some massive architectural differences.
Which brings us right to the core of this disastrous tool choice. Let's do a little diagnostic autopsy on that failed business we just talked about. The architectural and capability differences between traditional automation and true agentic AI are absolutely enormous. When decision makers fall for all that marketing hype and confuse these two vastly different architectures, it leads directly to the wrong tool choices. It's like you end up trying to use a hammer to drive in a screw. And the result? A completely failed implementation that brings the business to a grinding halt instead of helping it.
Let's break these down clearly so you don't make the same expensive mistake. Traditional automation covers your established tools. Think RPA, robotic process automation, or workflow tools like Zapier or Make. These tools follow rigid rules. It is always, without exception, if this happens, do that. Think of traditional automation exactly like a train on a track. It executes its predefined steps perfectly, reliably, repeatedly, taking you straight from point A to point B. But, and this is a big but, it has absolutely zero judgment. If an unprogrammed obstacle suddenly appears on the tracks, the train doesn't steer around it, it just crashes.
To really see the limitation of this train track model, let's look at the 9 a.m. robot. Consider a robot programmed to simply fill out a specific form every single morning at 9 a.m. sharp. That right there is traditional automation. And hey, it's incredibly useful for highly structured, repetitive tasks, but it does exactly what it's told and absolutely nothing more. If the form's website goes down for maintenance, or say a field name simply changes from first name to given name, the robot doesn't pause and figure it out. Nope, it just stares blankly at the screen and stops working entirely. The track changed, so the train derailed.
Now let's contrast that with agentic AI. Unlike our rigid train eye, an agentic AI is given a goal, not a script. It is not locked onto a predefined track. Instead, think of it like hiring a smart, adaptive driver. You just tell the driver where you want to go. The driver figures out the steps, uses tools, checking a GPS, turning the steering wheel, hitting the brakes, observes the results, and actively adapts when things don't go as expected. If there's a roadblock or some heavy traffic, the driver exercises judgment, throws it in reverse, and finds a completely new path to reach that final destination.
To see exactly how this adaptive driver works in practice, consider a goal like this. Research our top 3 competitors and prepare a comparison report. Notice the phrasing there. This is a high-level, business-oriented objective given to an agentic AI. You aren't giving it a rigid script of where to click, what specific URLs to visit, or what exact cells to copy and paste into a spreadsheet. You are quite literally just giving it the desired destination and trusting it to navigate the journey itself.
And what happens next is where the magic really lies. Once it gets that goal, the agentic AI acts autonomously. Step 1, it searches the web on its own to identify those competitors. Step 2, it actively reads the pages it finds and extracts the relevant data. Step 3, and honestly, this is a massive differentiator. It identifies gaps in the information it just found, realizes it doesn't have enough data yet, and initiates a completely new search to fill those gaps. Finally, step 4, it structures the output and delivers the finished report. No human defined each of those steps. The agent just reasoned its own way through the entire complex process, adapting as it went.
So here is the absolute core distinction that separates our rigid train from our adaptive driver. Traditional automation replaces repetitive human actions. Clicking a button, moving a file, copy-pasting data from one window to another. But Agentic AI replaces repetitive human thinking. It's actually taking over the cognitive load, the evaluation, the reasoning, and the moment-to-moment decision-making required to navigate a messy, unstructured task.
And because replacing physical actions and replacing cognitive thinking are vastly different capabilities, they carry entirely different implementation requirements for a business. You simply cannot treat them the same way during procurement or deployment. Implementing a system that mindlessly clicks buttons requires one specific set of rules and maintenance. But implementing a system that actually makes decisions, that requires a completely different level of oversight, totally different testing parameters, and most importantly, an entirely different level of organizational trust.
Because of this, we really need to talk about failure modes. This is where companies really get burned if they aren't paying attention. When traditional automation fails, it fails predictably. The rules break, the website changes, and the train simply stops on the tracks. You know exactly why it stopped and exactly where to fix it, but when an agentic AI fails, it fails unpredictably. Because its reasoning went wrong. It might have taken a wrong turn, misunderstood the context of a website, and just confidently produced a completely flawed report. Before deploying either of these into production, you absolutely must understand whether your tool will fail predictably when a rule breaks, or unpredictably when reasoning goes wrong.
Which brings us right back to our autopsy results for that enterprise company that lost millions on day one. So why did their multi-million-dollar initiative fail so spectacularly? Well, they listened to the marketing blur and they completely misunderstood the underlying architecture. They bought a rigid, pre-programmed train, but they tried to deploy it on a chaotic, ever-changing business route that desperately required an adaptive, thinking driver. So when the inevitable exceptions and roadblocks popped up on day one, the automated system had absolutely no reasoning capabilities to fall back on. The whole initiative just derailed instantly.
So as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with a final, provocative question. Something to help you immediately rethink your own AI strategies and tool choices. When you look at the systems you're evaluating right now, or the platforms you're currently deploying to solve complex business problems, is your business buying a train? Or are you hiring a driver? Because confusing the two is a multi-million-dollar mistake you simply cannot afford to make. Thanks for joining me and keep exploring.